We've got the recording on now. Yeah, let's go ahead.
All right, good morning, everyone. Just so you are aware, this is being recorded, as you heard. The session will be available later. But again, thanks. Good morning. My name is Veronica. I'm a geography student here at UC Davis. And welcome to MapTime's first in-person session since March 2020. But for those who don't know, MapTime is a spatial science research and learning cluster here on campus, and we're made up of graduate students, undergrads, postdoc staff, faculty, just to name a few. And for anyone who is interested, we welcome who wants to get involved with spatial data, learning, mapping technologies, to attend our workshops. Those are on Fridays, 10 to 12 p.m. online and here at the library room at 360. But we do have a great schedule for the rest of the quarter, including co-working workshops for those who want to learn or want to work on their own mapping projects here on campus, as well as how to integrate Survey 123 Connect with dashboards, the job panel, and more. So please check out our new website. We will post it for those who are interested in details and to register for upcoming workshops. But to kick us off, we do have Dr. Catherine Brinkley. She does direct the Center for Regional Change here at UC Davis, and she is working on community engaged research for over 16 years on legacy of working on environmental justice issues here in California. And we are here to learn how to search the contents of California's land use patterns and learn what land use plans and zonings do and how the plans are created, as well as how to add informed input from the planning process. So she'll let you know a little more about that, and just to start us off. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you.
All right. To start, I'm going to explain a little bit about what the Center for Regional Change does on campus, just to orient you to our work. And then I will give us a primer on how land use planning works in California and why everyone should get involved, no matter what your background or discipline is. You should write to your hometown, provide examples of policies that you want to see adopted, and help move the needle. So Center for Regional Change, we celebrated our 15 years 2 years ago, so it's now 17 years. And this is a center that was the brainchild of the late Ted Bradshaw. We have a Bradshaw Scholars Program in his honor. It was also the brainchild of the late Isao Fujimoto, who was a longtime faculty member in the College of Ag and Environmental Science for about 50 years. He also helped found Asian American Studies and was a big proponent of equity in agricultural systems. And we will be announcing a new student award for engaged research in his honor this year as well, which I'm very excited about. So you can already tell that part of our work is engaged student learning. We work with a whole bunch of community-based organizations, that's CBOs for short, outside of the university. And under the former director, faculty director, Jonathan London and Bernadette Austin, the Center for Regional Change helped the state build data tools like CalEnviroscreen, which maps where disadvantaged communities are located and then helps target cap and trade funding to development projects. So it's a justice-oriented development. We also do a lot of work with youth, and we have an excellent Stepping Stones toolkit online that Brandon Louie, our Associate Director of Engagement, and Nancy Erbstein in Education and Global Affairs have worked on for over a decade. And we work closely with CalFresh on campus, and that's the program that delivers food assistance. So it's all about building sustainable regions and change making. Let's see if I can advance slides. All right, so why would you ever want to read California's comprehensive plans? There are 482 cities in California, 58 counties, and the plans that those communities create, it can take years, multiple community meetings. There will be designers there who will be sketching ideas. Communities will debate, should we put crosswalks in at the senior center? Should we put them in at the school? Should we have a whole Safe Routes to School program or not? And that's where a lot of those efforts to make your hometown safer, more equitable, more environmentally friendly happen through those comprehensive plans. So plans have to be updated about every 5 to 8 years, at least the housing element. And then there's also a transportation element that needs to be updated more frequently. In addition, if you're interested in research, doing plan evaluations can be very fun. So you can see which communities are addressing topics that you care about. So for example, who's planning for wildfire? Who's even mentioning that term? Who's thinking about flooding? Who's mentioning the term climate adaptation? Who's addressing decarbonization? Or what I find fascinating is where the state is having these big high-level policy conversations, and yet all of the cities and counties are talking about something completely different. So then you get this, is the tail wagging the dog situation. Is local governance the key to climate action, or is the state setting visionary policy? Or maybe you don't need those dichotomies, it's both and. And then there's also very practical plan guidance. So how many of you, just by show of hands, are completely satisfied with the way that your hometown looks and operates? Okay, dead silence. So there's always a little, a couple of things you could change, even if you live in a pretty wonderful place. There's always some sort of improvement. And a great way to look for how to move the needle is to visit other places, see what they're doing differently, and then look in their plan and see how they did that. One of the big pushes at the state level is that the Governor's Office of Planning and Research creates these plan guidelines where the state says, here's what we think you should do in your land use plans. And then there's also community-based organizations like the California Environmental Justice Alliance, which we worked with to build this search engine that I'm going to show you today. And their push is really on environmental justice. So how can we build more equitable places? How can we bring the right voices to the table to make change that is not going to disadvantage already disadvantaged communities? So this would be examples of maybe not citing that toxic waste facility in the low income community of color. That's the prime example, and that's the example from which environmental justice rose to prominence across the United States. But here in California, it is mandated in our land use plans that we address environmental justice with a new state regulation. And that's pretty innovative for any state. It's innovative for the nation. It's innovative, globally. So we're in a really innovative planning climate, which is very exciting. And to support that planning climate, the California Environmental Justice Alliance, which is a network of 10 nonprofits, created the SB 1000 toolkit. That's the Senate Bill 1000 that established this mandate to help communities capacity build to meet that requirement of how do you get to environmental justice? Is that bringing fresh food into low-income communities? What does that look like? Is it more bus stops in underserved areas? The answer is yes to all of the above. And to support that effort, we helped build a tracking system so that SEHA and other advocacy groups can read across plans and see where communities are meeting state goals or other goals and exactly how. So just a little bit of how planning works in California so you have this background. So affordable housing, that's where housing costs no more than 30% of the monthly household income. Hey, Selena. Selena's from the Center for Regional Change as well. So show of hands, who thinks we have affordable housing in Davis? For those of you who live here. No. Yeah, the vacancy rate for rentals in Davis is almost zero. And housing can be upwards of 50% of anyone's budget. It's very out of whack because the city hasn't built enough housing. So the state recognized that a lot of cities were not building enough housing, and they started to put policies in place. And one of those policies was to have the regional governments assess how much housing needed to be developed and then to allocate that housing need out to local jurisdictions. So you'll have a regional housing needs assessment, that's called a RHNA if you follow housing policy. And then you'll have a regional housing needs allocation, also RHNA acronym. And then what happens? Well, so Davis for the latest housing element needed to build over 2,000 new housing units. 930 of those needed to be designated for lower income households. And That's per the State Department of Housing and Community Development. So then what Davis does is it gets together a committee, and that committee has public meetings, a series of public meetings, and they draft a housing element, which is a chapter within the land use plan. And that housing element should meet the needs for very low, low, and moderate income households. But it can also do so much else. It can map out how we're going to have safe routes to school. Where are we going to have protected bike lanes? I volunteer at my kids' school, and we have this awesome program where the kids can bike themselves on the greenbelt, and then we scan them in, and parents get a text message that their child has arrived. That's amazing. How could our housing element perhaps address decarbonization? Should we mandate solar? Should new housing be all electric? How can we reduce vehicle miles traveled? Because right now in Davis, with housing costing as much as it does, folks who work in Davis often can't afford to live in Davis, and that includes teachers and civic leaders, as civil servants. So the housing element is meant to do all that. Davis had a lot of conversation around their housing element. They drafted a housing element. It did not pass review. That can also happen to communities where they go through the effort of these conversations about how they want to grow. And if you've been to any city council meetings in Davis, you might have caught little hints of the flavor of what's happening, where there are concerns in certain neighborhoods about how tall the buildings might become, or how much services the city can provide. So those all meet in city halls. They can be spaces of a lot of weirdness and a lot of contention, but a lot of beauty as well, I think. Yeah. Review by the state, the housing and community development, and yes.
So they would say, we want to grow the city is 5 houses here, it's gonna be
5 is not enough. We told you to build over 2,000. But what's more likely, and what some cities have done, is they say, oh, we will build 2,000, and we've set aside this plot of land, which we've continuously set aside to build it on. It happens to be in a marsh that is unbuildable. So the state is paying attention to that. And there's a law professor on campus, Chris Elmensdorf. I recommend you follow him, because he is, if you want to learn about housing policy in California, he writes amazing threads and opines in a way that is very engaging. All right, so not only does the comprehensive plan, or the general plan as we call them in California, address housing, it also now has to address environmental justice under SB 1000, but it also has land use requirements. So where are we going to have industry? Where will we have commercial areas? It addresses transportation. Where will we have walk, bike paths, open space, so agricultural land preservation, conservation. How are we going to keep Poudre Creek the way that it is now, or restore it? Noise is a required element. This I find fascinating in Davis, because one of the ways that communities weaponize their plan, particularly against students, is by having very strict noise ordinances. And that's one of those ordinances that police often get called to investigate on, and certain groups of people end up being over-policed because of the way that their noise ordinance is drafted. Safety pertains to hazards. So if there's an earthquake, a flood, what's our plan? What's our plan for food security? And then communities in the Central Valley also need to address air quality. So how are you going to prevent or mitigate massive amounts of trucking in and out of communities? All right, so suppose you wanted to figure out, great, I know we need to do this. Where do you even start? I mean, you can go to city council and you can have debates, but you could also bring to those debates examples of other cities that have done this. However, I dare you, look up on Google, how should we address environmental justice, or ask Chat GPT. Those search engines are not designed to handle these sorts of complex policy questions. You will get a think piece, you will get whatever users have voted up on Reddit as being maybe the way to do it, but you won't get a comprehensive overview of how other cities, how other communities have really addressed these issues. And the good news for you is that nearly half of California's plans are out of date. So now is the time to do those updates. A lot of communities are out of compliance. They're in this, most are in this 5 to 10 year, most cities are within this 5 to 10 year range where that's the last time that they updated their general plan. Some have deferred much longer. And then the map here is the county level map. And part of the reason that communities defer is because it's hard to draft a plan. It takes a lot of conversation, consensus building, time, funding. The Davis Downtown Plan was a $1.2 million planning exercise, which I'm very proud of having sat on their committee. So to address some of these concerns, we built PlanSearch, and this is the website. So if you're following along online, you can access that right now. If you represent community groups, you can glean ideas for your next plan update. Perhaps you're a researcher and you want to pull language from across plans and do very fancy natural language processing, which I have done with Carl Stamer, and that was awesome to do. I'll present a little bit of our findings there. Maybe you're an educator and you want to get students in middle school or high school involved in their plan. There's a global youth movement focused on climate right now. And we've also built toolkits at the Center for Regional Change. That's the Stepping Stone toolkit I mentioned to help youth engage in 10 easy steps. Where they're learning opportunities. Or maybe you're a public agency and you're just curious, what are people talking about at the local level that we're not talking about at the state level? Maybe you're an advocate and you want to track progress. So who is actually planning for farmland preservation? How are they doing it? Or maybe you're an elected official and you want to find out what your region is planning to do so you can figure out those synergies. If you didn't have a search engine across plans, you'd have to go to each city's website, find each of the parts of the plan, compile them all together. Some of them will not be in readable PDFs. Some of them will be on paper and you'll have to go into the city. You might have to file a Freedom of Information Act, though they're public documents. That is what we had to do to get all of the data that we put into our search engine. So our search engine now covers over 1,000 files. With over 82 million words, and it includes every incorporated city and every county in California, and it took about 3 years to build. So you can type in any search term that you want here and hit submit. So just as a quick exercise, could somebody type in golf and tell me how many cities and counties address golf in their plans? Anybody got it? It's loading. All right. We did all of this on a shoestring budget. So in the ideal world, I would have more funding for memory and RAM, and we would upgrade so that more users could be on it and more rapidly search. The funding we have now is from the California Air Resources Board, and it's set to sunset in May. Anybody have an answer for golf? No.
It could be the first time that this is all over the website at the same time.
It doesn't, yeah. All right, well, I'll keep moving along, and once you get that search result, let me know. I preloaded just in case this happened. So you can type in environmental justice, and when we did this in our prototype that we built through, gosh, I'm blanking on the name now. It was a hackathon. There were only 40-ish hits across California. And now you get 93 cities mention environmental justice in their plans, and in 19 counties. So Of course, cities and counties can address environmental justice without calling it that. And the city of Richmond has done just that, where they talk about health equity. So I'll talk a little bit about how we've used natural language processing to tease out some of those synonyms, because there's so many synonyms for how wonky policy language is in plans. Because plans are hundreds of pages of document, all put together by their local communities who all have different values. So some communities will do climate adaptation, but they will not call it climate adaptation. They'll call it hazard mitigation, for example. So this has been we worked with the California Environmental Justice Alliance to develop this so that they could then see how cities and counties were addressing environmental justice. And then underneath your search hit, you'll be brought to a table. There's a cities tab and a counties tab, so you can see each city and each county, the year that the plan was adopted, the population size. So maybe if you're a city of about 60,000 like Davis is, which is the median city size across the United States, you're really interested in that scale of city as opposed to trying to transfer what LA is doing to the Davis context, or vice versa. And then you can pull up the highlighted PDF so you can read the actual plan. So you don't have to go to the website or deal with broken links. Oh, broken links sometimes. If you do, please email me. Or you can view the text and use the extracted text for some fancy footwork analyses. And I will say we also included a count. And one of the reasons we did that is when we were looking at electric vehicle policies, there is a weak correlation with the number of times plans talk about something and the strength of the policies when we evaluated, which makes sense. If you're talking a lot about it, hopefully you're creating policies that are strong. And strong policies would mean you're not just talking about electric vehicles, but you've got some metrics that you can assess your success rate on. So how many charging stations, for example. You've got a timeline you want to benchmark and reach. And you have dedicated staff that you've identified and potential funding sources. So all of those would make a stronger policy. Any search hits for golf yet? Yeah. 367. All right. Okay. 367. Hold that in your mind. Now, given the state's focus on racism and planning's focus on building anti-racist futures and addressing racist pasts, search the term racism and tell me how many cities you have a hit on. So once you pull up a PDF, we've highlighted all the mentions of environmental justice and, oh my gosh, you got it, Veronica? 3, yeah. So, I mean, I get chills every time I do it because you can clearly see that communities are spending a lot of time and effort planning for things like golf courses and golf course communities, but they're not necessarily thinking deeply about racism. And as we face plan updates, there's an opportunity to change that and to bring those conversations to bear. And environmental justice is the vehicle for that with plan updates right now. So you can view the plans on the website. And this is really useful because plans aren't just words. They also have pictures and they have maps. So they're multi-dimensional texts. And it can be really helpful to see how communities are visualizing these goals that they have. So if you're interested in how communities are addressing environmental justice, Jenny Wagner, who was a PhD in public health, and we hand-coded about 600 policies across only 7 city plans that had the strongest environmental justice focus. And the way that we could see they had the strongest environmental justice focus was through topic modeling, and that was work with Carl Stamer here. What Carl and I did was we built this big topic model to say, what are all the topics that plans are talking about? And how do those topics relate to each other? So a topic would be, just like with numbers, you can have correlations and words can correlate with the other words that are next to them. So if you see environmental next to justice and environmental next to health, very often, then you would say that environmental is more closely correlated with justice or more closely correlated with health than perhaps housing justice may be. So we're looking for those correlations across these 82 million words that are in the planning corpus. So what are some of the most common words? You can do a simple word cloud to find that out. unsurprisingly, housing, plan, development, community, goal, design. And then you can also build topics, and these are word correlations where you can see affordable often is the lead into housing, or housing then leads into program, or land leads into designation. So these topics become very complicated very quickly, and it takes planning expertise to decode what this topic is even addressing, because it's just a cluster of co-occurring words that I would know, and you might know, because they're talking about housing in the middle that is likely about housing, not about water planning, for example. So with Carl Stamer, we found that there were about 60 topics across the corpus that we use, which was 461 city plans. And what's so interesting about this is that a lot of the topics don't overlap. So all the way over here are the housing topics. All of these topics address housing needs. A lot of them overlap. So big multi-family housing has a lot to do with affordable housing. This is a housing topic way down here. Tell me about it in a minute. The rest of the corpus has to do with climate planning, air quality, hazard mitigation. This is school, and you would expect schools to talk about housing at about the same time, right? Making new housing or making new schools, you need to do both at the same time. This little topic number 12, that's so far removed from everything else that plans talk about and everything else that housing is trying to do with public housing and affordable housing, that's single family housing. So it's talking about large lot size and yards. So on my research website, you can access these topic models and play around with them. And the data science lab did such a great job with this, making it interactive. So you can click on terms that you care about, like housing, and the topics that mention those terms the most will show you how much they mention that term. So if you click on housing, all the topics that are over here, which are the housing topics, get big because they talk about housing a lot, whereas all the other topics that don't really talk about housing very much don't mention that topic very much. And you can do the same for, you can also click on particular topics and see which words are the most often there. So residential, family, single, density, estate, those are the types of words that are in this topic, which is how I know it's single family housing. And this finding, I mean, it was just so shocking to me that it was so far removed from everything else that we're trying to accomplish in plans, that I was really thrilled to join an effort, the National Zoning Atlas. So every plan has to speak to the zoning, which sets out where you're going to have that single family housing or where you're going to have that multifamily housing. And that's a land-based map. And all of those land-based maps are created at the city and the county level. The state hadn't yet stitched them together, so we had no idea what was planned. So how many multifamily units are planned? Very difficult to say. And this is in a state with very strong planning and planning oversight and planning support. That this was also true across the country. So Sarah Bronin, who's a planner and a lawyer at Cornell, started the Connecticut Zoning Atlas, and they found that over 90% of the state is zoned for single family housing, and that was a way to segregate, to make large lot single family areas that were predominantly wealthy, predominantly white. And so she spurred this national movement, and we're working with Berkeley on the California Zoning Atlas, which we should have out later this year, but that'll be very exciting to show that map and look at how California has zoned itself and what its future holds. You could also click on terms like emissions and see where, for example, climate readiness is being addressed. What I find concerning is, remember all those housing topics? So we're having a conversation over here about housing. We're having a conversation way over here on the other side of the plan about emissions. And part of that is because different interest groups come to the table when you're talking about how to redesign their neighborhood, what housing they want, versus when you're talking about content. And again, that's where my hope is that environmental justice bridges those differences. And then this is another topic, health, and this was the topic that correlated most strongly with plans that are addressing environmental justice by addressing health equity. So just a word of warning. If you asked Google to explain California housing policy using simple terms, if you just type that in, you might get UC Davis professor Chris Elmendorf opining about what we should be doing. I can't predict what Google's going to tell you right now. And the reason I can't predict is because Google, like Chat GPT, is a large language model, and it has drift. And the reason it has drift is because the background data that is fed into that model is continuously updated. Users can upvote it, and that means that you can't always get the same answer twice in a row, much less over time. So when you're trying to figure out how cities and counties are addressing topics that you care about, I think going directly to those plans and seeing how they're addressed in the plans is a very powerful way of doing it versus asking Chat GPT to tell you what to do. I'm only saying that because we're having conversation about data right now and how we use data, and there's a lot of excitement about those tools, and I'm excited about them too. But I'm also very cautious about how they might be deployed, even on evaluating plans. So you can upload plans to Chat GPT, and you can ask Chat GPT to read across them, because it is so boring to code plans. It is dull because you have to read every plan, and you have to see, how did they dedicate staff? Do they have a timeline? Where's the implementation section? It's just so complicated. So it's very tempting to say, well, we could ask Chat GPT to read the plan and make sense of it. But because of the model that's behind Chat GPT, you could ask it to make sense of it today, and you could ask it to make sense of it tomorrow, and you might get different sense making. And some of that may happen with humans too, as we learn what's in plans and how we do plans. And maybe this all speaks to the need to plan differently in a way that's a lot easier to understand. So just to toot our own horn, we recently won the California American Planning Association Award for Academic Excellence. Thank you. I got to go pick that up 2 weeks ago in Fresno, and Cameron Cabosa, who's one of the students who worked on PlanSearch, is right there, and she's a native of Fresno and leads an environmental justice youth group there. So she's one of our poster young scholars involved. And then Aniket Bangamore is our current lead developer right now with the Center for Regional Change. And in the background, this is the Center for Regional Change. We have a little library, there's a microwave, there's some chairs. So if you want to come visit us, we're in Hunt Hall. And we're working on not just land use planning, but we're also working on housing and with youth engagement and our zoning atlas as well. So I'll just end with a few thoughts. What is it going to take for me to keep this running after our funding runs out next year? We need server space, we need memory, we need personnel, a computer programmer. The plans and communities are constantly updating plans, and there's no central repository for those. The state isn't collecting them, which I find incredible. And I donate my time to it. So those are all the constantly writing grants to keep the work going. And I think that's just important to share, because all of the data science that we do often starts as this labor of love before it may one day become institutionalized. So with that, I'll thank our team, and I'll open it up for questions.
Zero ways that students are interested in get involved in this.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So we now are accepting students for
the room. Yeah. It's taking up the mic, but I don't think that thing is behaving properly. So
we're accepting students for the Zoning Atlas project right now, and Clancy McConnell is our lead on that. If you're interested, that involves, he makes it very fun, but it involves going to Yeah, thank you. Each city's zoning map and then saying, what are they even talking about? Because it's not standardized. So is this single family? Is this large lot? Is this agricultural land preservation? Every jurisdiction is different, and they're standardizing all that coding and then aggregating it up. I'm always happy for students to pitch research projects. Finding funding to support your time is the tricky spot, and there are awards on campus and opportunities for that. But my goal with making all the data public was that you all could just start using it. People could use it, as opposed to what can sometimes happen when researchers get their hands on large data sets. They're like, it's mine. If you want to see it, you have to pay. Milk it for everything. So it's all out there in public. So if you wanted to use it for a class project, you could. So for example, for your master's project, I could see you looking at Orange County and surrounding communities and how they're talking about displacement and gentrification. And I mean, how many plans mention gentrification? Yeah, let's find out. Because, and I say that because there's one thing to look across the corpus of plans, and then it's another thing to look at individual plans. So just 2 examples on that. One, how many of you all have been to Truckee near Tahoe? Yeah. All right. How many of you knew that it had a historic Chinatown? A Chinatown? No, you might not know it. If you looked at their general plan, they mention historic preservation. They mention character, historic character, hundreds of times. But the city of Truckee would not be there if there weren't for the railroad, and the railroad wouldn't be there if it weren't for Chinese workers on the railroad. There was a thriving Chinatown in Truckee. It was burned to the ground. People were lynched. This is a part of the history that Truckee is not grappling with as they talk about community character and historic preservation. If you search the term small town character across plans, there are code words like that are used by communities to signify, I think they're code words. Who knows what they actually are. So you can see this in those individual plans in the sense that Truckee talks a lot about historic preservation. They talk a lot about their community character. They don't talk a lot about, they don't mention China, they don't mention Chinese, they don't mention Chinatown at all in the plan, which I find very interesting. And then you can also look across California plans that do mention that. And Wheatland is one that has this awesome historic preservation around their Chinatown. And it's a really small city, but they've done a great job lauding their history. So I encourage you all to think about those sorts of reflections when you look at individual plans and the language that they're using, and then look across the corpus as well of plans. Did you gentrification?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I put in the chat box, 21 cities mentioned gentrification and only 5 counties mentioned.
It's better than racism.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was curious if you could talk a little bit about how like because it's really nice that it not only shows us how many plans that it sort of shows you that are. How challenging was that to get that kind of search going?
Super challenging. And I think if I have it in one of these older slides, let me see if I have it in here. Oh yeah, I do. So we tried, because California has a lot of heteroscedasticity. So a lot of the urban areas are Bay Area and LA, San Diego. So big population centers and then lots of rural land. And one of my pet peeves in my discipline, public health and urban planning, is it's called urban planning. It's also called city planning. And I really love the program that I teach in because it's called community and regional development. And then the grad program is community development. And another one that I teach in is geography. And those terms are much more expansive, as they should be, because urban areas are about 3% of land uses. And we plan for all of the land. So it's a mental disconnect to think of it as planning for cities, because you're planning for all these rural areas too. So anyway, one of the frustrations that I had is when you map land use, you end up showing regulations that govern large areas of land, right? Like San Bernardino, our largest county, pops out as just being like, wow, this is a big deal because San Bernardino mentioned it once. And maybe it is, you know. But if you then try and weight it for population, which is another thing that we tried, the map just looks so ugly and it's so confusing, and it turns into this like big peanut shape with bubbles, and no one knows which city is where. And so I have really struggled with trying to figure out how to represent population. And I welcome thoughts.
Perennial challenge in every field. Like I've done, sorry, I've done flood mapping. It's the same thing. You have 6 flooded properties in San Bernardino.
Mhm.
8 policies, and so you have this gigantic red.
Yeah.
San Bernardino, which is like it's 5
Mhm.
houses. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It is challenging. And I mean, I think when you map voter registration and voter turnout, that you end up with the same sort of strange storytelling in a way where, yeah, where there's this dichotomy between where people live and the land. Other questions?
Let's have questions too. That makes me good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my question is, are there any other representatives you want to?
We crowdsource when plans are updated so that we can celebrate a new plan on social media. So that'll be a constant update. So for example, somebody from Stockton recently emailed and said, we just updated our plan and it's adopted and it's online and it's not in your database. Like, great, thank you. Send it to me and I will put it in our database. So we're doing that. And then we're also rolling out capacity building across the state right now. We're working with about 10 community-based organizations with the California Air Resources Board. And we're targeting decarbonization, zero emission vehicle readiness, and reducing vehicle miles traveled. So we've built policy briefs for them. Those are available on the Center for Regional Change project website. They're as Word documents so that community orgs, anyone can take them and edit them and put their logo on them and have them shovel ready to go so that you don't have to do all that digging and revising and considering. And then we also have PowerPoints up there for how to use not only our general plan database, but also a climate action planning database that Mike Boswell and Adrian Greaves at Cal Poly have put together, so that about 230 cities across California have created their own standalone climate action plans. And so you may be wondering why. They could have just done a general plan update. But general plan updates all need to undergo the California Environmental Quality Act review in order to be adopted. And climate action plans don't have to go through that review, which is, I think, a little bit ironic considering their topical focus. They can, but it's voluntary. In addition, climate action plans have a different set of rules and regulations around how they get put together. So they can be assembled by a small group of concerned citizens pretty rapidly, unlike the efforts that would feed into the general plan. However, I have to say, Mike Boswell and I are starting to look at, okay, so communities that address these topics in their general plan versus their climate action plan, which is more successful. And I don't know what we're going to find. We could find that, that Margaret Mead quote that all it takes is a small group of concerned citizens to make change, or we could find that you need to do some deep consensus building to actually make change around issues. And I will say, for the city of Davis, I sat on the downtown planning committee for 3-ish years. That plan was adopted about 6 months ago, and the plan included 1,000 new housing units in downtown Davis, which is great because it's densification. Within 6 months of adoption, half of those units already had developers applying for permits to build them. So that also shows incredibly pent-up demand for more downtown development and infill development, which is very exciting for Davis.
So we have a question online. Charlie's asking, have you done any analysis of similarities or differences between plans as a function of spatial adjacency? So are similarly located plans similar or different?
Yeah, that's a great question, Charlie. Thank you. Mark LaBelle does a lot of this policy diffusion work on campus. So I'm just waiting for him to do that. My hunch is that the way that we build our cities, there's a lot of internal segregation. And there's a lot of internal segregation regionally too. So Mitch Schneider did this awesome paper for me in CRD 200, a class I teach, and he was really interested in the campfire. And he was able to show that Chico in Butte County intentionally did not build housing and pushed it into the foothills. So you have these central cities that are creating incredible disparity where they're pushing low-income folks out of the main city and up into fire-prone or hazardous areas. So I would imagine that you would see more spatial differences than you would see spatial similarities. But beyond that individual case study, I haven't looked at it yet. Thank you for the question. Yeah.
Do you have any feedback on engagement in your online tool, like who's using it for what, cities, counties, like big cities, small areas?
No. We have a Google Analytics and I need to go review it but we don't collect. We're going to collect that with our community-based organization partners. So in 6 months, I will have a better answer for you than I have right now. But yes, I should do that. And I'm also going to speak on October 22nd from 5 to 7 at the International House about the tool and how you can use it to meet sustainable development goals, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, because that date marks the 78th anniversary of the United Nations. So that's just another chance to come hear me talk about general plans and what they can do for you if you're interested.
Another question online asking, or I guess more a statement, Charlie's saying it might be interesting to correlate travel distances and patterns for work with spatial diffusion of plan features. Sounds like people have grant ideas.
Yeah, great. We had a project similar to that, which is also on our website. It's the Bay Area Mega Region Project. And for that, we looked at under COVID, folks were moving out of the Bay Area further and further away. So you ended up with these mega commuting zones and bedroom communities. And California used to have, and this is an unfunded state mandate, that jurisdictions analyze their housing workforce balance and whether they had enough housing for their workforce. But I don't think that the state has followed up on that in over 10 years. So that would be a great way to visualize and build equity into your planning process, where you're considering who works in your city and how far do they have to commute to get there. On average, can they afford to live in the city? And that for Davis, it's dire. We are at a tipping point right now because we have not grown out and we have also not grown up. the campus has done their part by building student housing. But the city itself has not done its part. In fact, the general plan is over 20 years old, and it includes a 1% per year growth cap, which you can't do that. You can't just say our city's only going to grow 1% per year. And the effect that it has had is that families with small children are especially hard hit because they're under a lot of financial burdens with childcare. And so the school district is losing about 65 kids per year. So you reach a certain number of enrollment losses and you lose federal state dollars. You can't attract teachers, you close schools, you have these big gaping holes in your downtown storefronts, but also your civic institutions. And all of these features are connected. They cascade, they build on each other reciprocally, or they disintegrate.
I thought it was interesting what you said about housing. This isn't a mapping or whatever question, but what you said about housing not being connected to circulation or emissions,
Mhm.
because you see that exact thing. Where do we fill our school enrollment? We fill it from Spring Lake. So now you have all those people driving
Yeah,
and it's connected, but
Yeah.
it's not connected in,
I know.
yeah.
I know.
There's like 1,000 kids or something in the school district from,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
well, it's a lot.
It's a lot. We have a lot of work to do in Davis, telling this story to people who need to hear it, so that we can consensus build to make a better plan. Yeah.
Like another question online. Apologies, I can't see the whole thing right now. So Michael is asking, are there any tools available to access downstream development decisions that might be driven by these plans? Like if a plan codifies that the county or city wants to promote renewable energy or industrial development, is there a good way to track the projects that might come out of that?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. So when I'm not working on land use planning, the other thing that I work on is food systems and networks. So mapping first point of sale and thinking about those economic networks. So I think very much in networks. And one of the problems with the built environment is that it's such a complex system that you could say, oh, we're going to require all electric or solar. And that might not work for every place everywhere. And if you don't get a large enough sample size, you can't prove what works or what doesn't. And every place has its own different configuration. So you just need tons of data to actually prove that something is going to work or not. And when you're trying to do something new, you don't have tons of data. And the other problem with that is when you try and pull examples abroad. So I teach a study abroad class, Sustainable Cities of Northern Europe, and I love it because I get to walk 26 students through Sweden, Denmark, Northern Germany, and Switzerland. And I show them these things that just like, they will blow your mind. For example, there's a neighborhood in Sweden where when you throw your trash away, you put it in this little chute and it just sucks it out of the neighborhood. There's no garbage trucks coming through there. Or another one in downtown Copenhagen, there's a huge waste incineration facility. It burns trash. And in the US, those facilities were built in the 70s. They were put in low-income neighborhoods and communities of color. They spew out toxins. They are ugly to look at. No one wants to live near them. What Copenhagen has done, they put an artificial ski hill on top of it. There's a cafe, a climbing wall. You can see it from their iconic Little Mermaid statue. They're really proud of their trash incinerator. It's beautiful. It doesn't smell because they have inverted air systems. I mean, it's so difficult to say this will work and this won't work when you're trying to move the needle. And I can talk all day long about what Copenhagen has done with waste incineration, and I will not convince anyone in California to try it because so many communities have fought so hard and have suffered so long that the only way to make a waste incineration facility work in California would be to site it in the most affluent neighborhood possible. And that, then you're going up against some of the deepest pockets in the world. Like the Bay Area, I think alone produces $14 trillion. So it is its own country almost, and yet can't figure out housing.
Apologize for the noise that's going on over there. They're installing blinds today, and when they said they were gonna do it at 10, it didn't occur to me to tell them don't do that. So I apologize. That's what all that noise is.
All right. I've lulled you all into a sense of responsibility, and you're on fire, ready to go jump into your general plan process.
Not seeing any more questions on the chat, so thank you so much for the talk today. This was, I'm going to play with this tool and see what else I can learn from it. This is great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you all.
And I'll note for the folks in the room, Veronica brought us donuts, so help yourself. There's also stickers by the door, and if anyone came in and didn't sign in by the door, please do that. It's how we make the case that we are cool, and we should keep getting things like stickers. Yeah. And for folks online, thanks for joining us. If you have feedback for how things went, feel free to email me, and I would appreciate hearing that because this is a work in progress. Bye, everybody.